Wow, this was fascinating. Okay, so there's this woman named Amy, and she is 34 and she lives at home with her parents as an adult. And in this article in Glamour, she talks about why she never wants to leave. Before I read a little excerpt of the article, I would love to know, do you know people that have moved home during the pandemic? Maybe you yourself have moved in with relatives or your parents during the pandemic. What has the experience been like for you, or what was it like for you in the past when that was your living arrangement? I'm so curious about the ways in which the United States propositions like intergenerational familial households as like a bad thing, where in many cultures, notably like in China, it's quite normal. Okay, so it says, when Amy was 21, she graduated from university. At 24, she earned herself a creative role at one of the UK's top advertising firms. And at 32, when the pandemic struck, she moved back in with her parents, and 2 years later, her childhood home is still her address. She says, I was living in a flat in London with another girl when the initial restrictions began. She decided to take the leap and move in with her boyfriend just before the full lockdown was announced. And so instead of sitting alone in an overpriced flat in Islington, I decided to move home, Amy says. Initially, the move was intended to be a short-term solution. I did have reservations about moving back in with my mom and dad at 35, but actually, it was a huge relief, Amy says, her voice joyously animated as she walks me through all the benefits that came with her new living arrangement. We had a family dinner every night, my mom consoled me when anxiety around COVID got too much, and my dad would try to order a new activity every weekend for us all to try. We worked our way through at-home pottery kits, board games, and even terrarium making. That sounds so fun. And she says, even when it all felt overwhelming, I knew there was a home-cooked meal and a wholesome evening ahead. My first gut reaction before we move on is I'm so happy for this person, and I think this is a great, great idea, both financially and emotionally, if you have a great relationship with your parents. It does sound like, though, that her parents are pretty financially stable, and it sounds like that her biggest concern was, like, adjusting to the emotional toll of COVID when so many people obviously are housing insecure, don't have access to food, and so, obviously this is going to be a pretty nice setup if your family relationship is super nice and if your family's well off financially. That's my first reaction. But I'm also super happy for this person, and I'm very pro intergenerational family living. I think it's just healthier. You save more money. You're able to. I just don't understand the culture of moving to a big city only to pay exorbitant prices in rent when landlords are literally scamming you. They're not actually doing any of the renovations, and then you're hemorrhaging all of your money for a property you don't even own to be alone and sad in the middle of nowhere. LOL, can you see that I'm biased? Okay, so the next part she says, there were a few teething problems, she adds. We definitely had to get used to living together again, and it took some time for us to get the boundaries right. My mom understanding that she didn't have to ask why I wasn't working if I stayed in bed past 9 a.m., or me not drinking their wine instead of going to buy my own. And I had to spend a few £100s to bring my room up to date, as the old posters and toys did feel slightly jarring at first. But the best bit, no one asked me why I still lived with my parents, she enthuses. Ordinarily, living at home past the age of 27 is mocked within our society, and I have definitely made judgments on people based on this setup. Quick cue, why is it mocked? I just never understood this. I have lived in all of the world's major cities. I've lived in Los Angeles. I've lived in New York. I just I have lived that city life, but I just don't understand why it would be mocked to live at home with your loved ones, people who love and care for you. I just feel so many people, because of capitalistic individualism culture that forces them to be this type of automaton worker bee type of person, miss out on the glory years of their parents because they just feel they're not allowed to I don't know, it's just so weird. She says, ordinarily living at home past the age of 27 is mocked within our society, and I've definitely made judgments on people based on this setup. My friends used to joke that anyone we matched with on Tinder who had a lame chat probably lived at home with his mom, and the phrase she still lives at home though had definitely been brought up to contradict someone's success elsewhere. Ooh, that's interesting. So if you have a successful friend and the friend group is oh, but she still lives at home, implying that, she was only able to reach that success because of the money she saved from not having to pay rent. That is fascinating. Look at that bias right there. Okay, now let's move to the next paragraph. However, the pandemic removed lots of the stigma around moving home. In fact, for those lucky enough to have a happy and healthy family home, moving back with your parents became a point of envy. My friends were all jealous that I got to cozy up at home and got looked after while they were homeschooling or cramped in these small spaces. That is so true. I feel the pandemic really changed our relationship with how we consider like what is normal, what we take for granted, like what we have to do. I mean, like the shift in working is like so clear, right? Like the shift to remote work, like that many people thought was just inconceivable. I remember back when I was working on Wall Street, like if you took a remote day, it was like, oh my gosh, like you're gonna get fired. But now it's like so normal, like remote work is just a part of life. This part's super interesting. Amy isn't alone. During the pandemic, more than 2/5 of young adults, that's the age 18 to 31, have moved back in with their parents or are planning to, according to a survey by Compare the Market. And the rising cost of living, including energy bills rising around £700 per year. This is in the context of the UK, but I think there's a lot of crossover for the US. A year, petrol costs, most of all at all-time high. We're paying almost £400 more a year for it. At imminent national insurance hike has meant that more and more young people are joining them. In fact, the same survey found that 6 in 10 said financial worries were the main reason behind their decision. Notably, which the piece brings up, which is something that I often bring up in this conversation, is amongst rich people and wealthy people, living at home until you get married is like very normal, and it actually sets you up for more financial success. The article brings up Jodie Comer, who is like the BAFTA award-winning star of Killing Eve, and that she like still lives with her parents, and she's literally a famous actress. Also, A-list star Jennifer Lawrence has lived with her parents multiple times, even at the height of her fame. It's so interesting how this type of behavior, when you're wealthy, is really encouraged, but when you're poor or middle class or lower middle class, is really demonized, because when you're poor, middle class, or lower middle class, you're expected to be a cog in the system. You're expected to be a worker that is generating capital for that rich class. So you are, often encouraged to do the things that are going to make you the most efficient worker in order to increase their capital, their investments, their brokerage accounts. But these people who are already wealthy, who already have reaped the benefits of capitalism, are allowed to do whatever they want and are not discouraged from having what could be argued to be a really strong financial decision, and also a way to get to know your loved ones beyond your childhood. The article notes that the list of people who do this goes on, and it's often packed full of successful people, often millionaires, who just see the joy, companionship, and humbling benefits that living with your parents can offer you, and perhaps in a way that living with friends or a partner just never can. I thought this was quite cute. It says, "My parents will sometimes pick me up from a night out when I can't get back or the price of an Uber is too high," Amy says. "I know they worry less when they are able to do that for me, especially after the passing of Sarah Everhart, and it certainly makes me feel safer when I'm planning to go out after dark." That's true. Like, they can look after you. I imagine too that raising children in this environment, you immediately have like a multi-generational environment to help you raise this kid, to balancing the home care duties. It's almost like a commune in like a way. It's like if everyone's like splitting the grocery duties, if everyone's splitting the cleaning duties, it's like much easier to thrive because you're all like supporting each other. Now, I can't find the chart because it was like 2 years ago when I saw this, but it was this social scientist who was basically breaking down the amount of time over our lifetimes. And if anyone knows this or can provide the chart, that would be great. I'll look for it and see if I can find it, but I just know it's going to be in the recesses of my Dropbox. I don't know where I'm going to find it, but basically this chart broke down as you age, what percentage of time you spend with your partner, what percentage of time you spend at work, what percentage of your time you spend asleep, and the drop off of how much time you spend with your parents over time after you leave the house at 18, go to university, get your job, move to the city, whatever, is so steep. And it's just so sad to think about all of the missed opportunity to spend time with them, to get to know them in a new context, for them to know you as an adult person and not just the child that they raised. And I just think it's so sad that this type of behavior is so strongly demonized when so many could really benefit from it. Now, I can't find the exact article where I read it, but I was also reading this really fascinating piece that talked about how in some intergenerational Chinese families, there is the practice of all of the aunts and uncles basically pulling their money together for the child to then basically buy them this house for when they do get married or when they do move to this place beyond wanting to be in the community, but how it's so common for them to live at home until that marriage or until that next step, and then to keep them from ever having to be prey to the predatory landlords, they basically pull together and then buy them this house, so then they're able to just move to that and actualize in that next step of life, which I also thought was really fascinating. And I was wow, it seems so many cultures have just really realized the profound financial and emotional benefits of this. Why is America lagging? Why in the United States in a country where like mental health crises are like at an all-time high. Like, why are we so against communal living, so against collectivism, so against like taking care of one another, when that is, as we see by the research and as we see from anecdotal evidence, like what makes people the happiest and most successful? That's my question. Oh my gosh, I only have 20 seconds left and I totally forgot that I had discussion questions. Okay, so I don't have time to read them because it's literally counting down. It says I have 15 seconds, but you can pause the screen and read. And I was just thinking more about like the implications of people who aren't close to their family, or like whose families don't have money. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this video. Bye.